You'll be watching St. Louis. The best in the U.S. The best in the world. Only one will be king. The Sinquefield Cup.
Hello and welcome to round 2 of the Sinquefield Cup here in St. Louis, the strongest chess tournament in American history. Absolutely incredible. Today we've got world number 1 and number 2, US number 1 and US number 2 facing off. We're bringing you all the action. I'm Jennifer Shahade.
And this is Seirawan.
Grandmaster Yasser Seirawan. What do you think of the games yesterday?
Oh, I was delighted. I mean, 2 victories to start. Talk about starting with a bang. Wonderful, wonderful. 2 great matchups today. I'm really looking forward to today.
And we have Grandmaster Maurice Ashley for more on yesterday.
In today's action, we saw the number 1 player in the United States, Hikaru Nakamura, defeat the number 2 player in the world, Levon Aronian, after Aronian blundered horribly with the move Queen to B5.
Yeah, of course it's embarrassing. I rarely make blunders like this, and I'm really embarrassed.
In the other game, world number 1 Magnus Carlsen crushed reigning U.S. champion Kamsky, and, pleased with his victory, had this to say about playing a devastated Aronian in tomorrow's round.
I'll try to pounce on that, of course, to continue my momentum, try and kick him while he's down.
Kick him while he's down. That's the buzzword we were all saying yesterday. Well, I had a dream this morning, too much chess on the brain, I think, that today's games would end in a draw. And if tradition holds to form, that would be the case because Nakamura has never defeated Kamsky with the white pieces in a classical game, and Carlsen hasn't lost with the black pieces to Aronian in over 6 years. So we've got to hope that that tradition goes out the window after yesterday's 2 dramatic victories and start this round 2 with a bang in the Sinquefield Cup. Back to you, Jen and Yas.
Hey, yeah, today we've got some thrilling matchups. World number 1 and number 2 facing off.
Yes, indeed. And you know that this rivalry is going to go on for many, many, many years because both are so very young.
Magnus Carlsen, 22 years old, starting the tournament with a victory.
Right.
Very nice victory indeed. And he's playing against Levon Aronian, who started with a terrible loss.
Yeah, just a momentary lapse. That's all it took. A single move, and the game was lost.
Embarrassing, as he later called it. And we've also got 2 rivals in the United States, Nakamura, the number 1 rated player, and the reigning U.S. champion, Kamsky.
Right, and this also is a lot of ego at stake for both players here as they try to position the jockey as America's number 1.
And the players are seeded, and one of my big questions today is Nakamura going to play 1e4 again? Because he hasn't had that much success playing d4 against Kamsky.
Right, and I think we're going to see e4 again. I think Hikaru yesterday was very satisfied with his opening. He didn't win the game because of the opening, but he had the kind of position that he enjoyed. So I think he's going to go for e4 once more.
I'd like to see that, indeed. And yesterday he played an anti-martial, and Kamsky also plays double king pawn openings. And not usually the martial line, usually a Breyer, another type of Roy Lopez.
Right. He mixes it pretty well, though.
Oh, you mean some other openings as well?
Oh, no, I meant in terms of the Rui Lopez. He does do Breyers, he does do Marshalls, he does do a few other, and just the classical Chigorins.
Right. So if Nakamura does play 1e4, though, you expect Gata to respond with e5, or do you
yes,
think he
I
might?
would.
Yeah.
I certainly do.
All right. Well, let's see what it's going to be. Again, in previous matchups with the white pieces, Nakamura has generally played d4 or knight f3, but there it is. You're right. e4. I love it.
e4.
First serious game that Nakamura has played the move best by test against Kamsky. We love it.
The best by test comment is because of Robert James Fisher, who called e2, e4 the best by test.
And I think we're going to see d4 on the other board, so it's nice to have like a kind of combination.
I think we're seeing a Sicilian by Kamsky. I'm really surprised, but
Well, he does sometimes go for the Sicilian, some kind of con Sicilian. I'm surprised though, because you would think he would go for his solid Roy Lopez just because of the matchup in styles.
Right.
Surprising indeed.
And
I like it though.
Oh, and I believe he's actually playing a Najdorf.
I can see Maurice getting excited as well in the background. We
goodness.
like this.
Wow.
We like to see this. It's
I
not my
don't know.
favorite opening.
Yeah, well, I don't know about Maurice's prediction of two draws, because very, very early the players are going after one another.
And let's see what Maurice has to say about this opening here.
Well, this is what we want to see, obviously. I'm glad that it's not starting out with any of that tepid stuff. The Roy Lopez can obviously start off very slowly, take a while to develop. But this kind of opening that they're playing, a Khan, it looks like with an early B5, yes, that's that funky stuff. We've seen players try this over the years, but usually against lower ranked opposition, not at this high level. So I'm surprised to see Kamsky rolling this out. But remember how interestingly he played yesterday. He played the move H5 that shocked all of us. We all felt like, what is he doing? But he's showing that he's ready to play some interesting chess round after round. After all, last place is still 20K, right? So he can always go for it. It's not so bad that he has to worry about not getting any prize money. So it looks like he's definitely looking to play maybe not quite his style and keep this Sinquefield Cup super entertaining. Back to you guys.
That's right. Well, Gada Kamsky can make any opening into a solid opening. Even the Sicilian, which is not considered to be the most solid, much more dynamic and fighting, and he did choose the Khan Sicilian,
Right.
which is very. I don't know, it's like a Sicilian which is even more counterintuitive to the amateur player, because Black doesn't develop any pieces for the first 5 moves.
Right. Well, you've seen these pawn moves by Black. In the meanwhile, Hikaru has developed his cavalry into the center and the middle of the board, so White is doing fine. And the whole idea behind the Khan, and specifically the way that Gada plays this variation, he makes this early aggressive queenside advance. The idea behind that move is this bishop is a little bit buried behind the d7 and e6 pawns. So the bishop is looking for a new diagonal, and in conjunction with this idea of b5, b4 driving away the knight, the pawn on e4 might be weak. That was why we saw bishop d3 by Hikaru, fortifying the pawn on e4 already. Gada continued with his bishop b7 idea of developing the bishop, hitting this pawn. Castles. We always know that we tell our students, castle early, get your king out of the center.
And they're just firing out moves here.
Boy, they are blitzing
both
away.
Both players very well prepared.
Wow.
As they should be if they're playing at this level in the Sicilian. But yeah, let's keep going. This game is just
castles.
A very exciting beginning here.
Knight c6, knight takes c6, bishop takes c6. Keep in mind the players are following the dictates of theory.
That's right.
What has been played in the past. After takes, we see rook, I believe, came to e1. Now this is an interesting move. Queen b8. Okay. Now my theory, I'm losing track of theory here. This move looks pretty okay. I would have expected Gada to develop his kingside pieces, but queen b8.
Preparing bishop d6 perhaps without allowing something like bishop b5 would snag that bishop on d6.
Exactly.
So a very strange looking move, but clearly prepared by Gada.
Without question. a4 was Hikaru's move. He wants to create a weakness on the queen side. Gada advanced his pawn with b4, attacking this knight, as mentioned earlier, and the knight jumped into the center of the board. That's
just a thrilling move to start out, and now we see the point of rook d1.
Right.
It looked like this quiet rook move, but now it's allowing knight d5, so if you capture that knight,
yes.
Let's see what happens. And pawn takes d5 check, not only is your king in a world of trouble, but you're also going to lose your piece back.
Exactly.
So this has got to be good for White, although Black would end up a pawn No, this
No.
would just be even in pawns after taking c6, so just like horrible.
Right.
Bishop e7, I guess you could try, but
This is terrible. This is a
then you're gonna have
terrible.
trouble. The problem is then you're gonna have trouble castling because knight f6 castling, your e7 bishop's gonna hang. So
Definitely, that
is
knight.
just-
That knight is poison. You can't capture the knight.
and that leads the way for us to play something like bishop f4, right?
Right. This is
That's a nice thing about having that knight on that square.
a threat.
And that's why Kamsky followed it up with bishop d6, and then we see another slashing move here by Nakamura. Again, both players clearly very well prepared. Queen to h5, which is both obviously an attacking move, but additionally guards the h2 pawn with the bishop on d6, supported by the queen on b8, just pressured.
Correct.
So we're going to be really thrilled to see how this game plays out. Let's throw it to Maurice and see what he has to say about this opening.
Well, this is one of those in my wildest dreams kind of position. It's just funky, knights on d5 hanging, queens out in the game, kings in the middle of the board. This is such a fiery start. But what I noticed was when Nakamura played the move queen to h5. If you noticed, when he played it, he banged it out and immediately got up from the board. I remember when Kasparov played against Anand in the 1995 World Championship, and he, in that classic game in Game 10, when he just kept banging down moves, he was prepared, he knew he had the novelty, prepared up to like 26 moves at home, and he made sure Anand knew it by banging down his moves, getting up from the board, leaving the room instantly, and then when he came back after Anand had sweated for 5-10 minutes over each move, he'd play instantly again and get up from the board as if to say, I got you, sucker. Don't worry about it. He went on to crush Anand in that game. So Nakamura with a little bit of bravado right now, I think. So we'll see if Kamsky can stay cool under this Nakamura pressure. Back to you guys.
Well, before we go to the first game, which I think is also an intriguing opening as well, I'm looking at this position. Gada has just played this move, knight on g8 to e7, as we see, and I'm looking, and I don't know if it's going to work, but one idea really looks pretty attractive, I must say, is as a piece sacrifice, bishop h6. Let me just give an example of what I mean by that. After captures on h6, check, the king would have to go to d8, and the queen...
Tell us why it can't go to f8.
Indeed, that would be a checkmate in one.
Yeah, we like those checkmate in one.
Checkmate in one.
Especially it's very pretty.
King
A
f8.
knight, kind of like a variation of a smothered mate, yeah.
Very powerful knight, protects the e8 and g8 squares while the queen attacks the king. That would be the checkmate. And I mean, we see a lot of piece sacrifices in the Sicilian by white, and this could lead to, wow, I think a very powerful attack. Again, it depends on just how deep Hikaru's preparation
Why
is.
do you think this is so powerful? I see you got this threat of queen g7, which could put my rook in some danger, but then I could respond to that with king c7. You don't think my king's going to be protected well enough over there?
It's entirely possible it is. It's a speculation by myself, of course, but I'm sitting there looking. It's not that easy from Black's point of view. Black has to pay attention to moves like rook d1 and bishop c4. And again, Black's king is still stuck in the center. But okay, I mean, it's just ideas from White's point of view. I was trying to make that knight on d5 really stand out.
I mean, one way or the other, Nakamura is licking his lips here. He is going to attack. Let's take a look quickly at the other game, because we do, as exciting as this other game is, we have the two highest rated players in the world playing today.
Right.
So that's exciting no matter what happens. And Aronian has played d4. Now, in recent games, Carlsen has tried a number of things against Aronian's opening, including a weird-looking King's Indian at the Tata Steel tournament.
Right.
Which turned out okay for him.
Yes, Magnus in his opening is beginning to become have a wider, more varied choice. In principle, he used to play the Nimzo Indian. That was his solid choice. Then he started playing Queen's Gambits, periodically throwing in some other openings. This is a bit of a surprise. The Dutch defends f5.
And how about that fashion by Aronian today.
Oh, yeah, he's
Yellow,
colorful.
yellow and blue. I like it.
Wow, it's sharp contrast. Knight f3 by Aronian, knight f6, c4, and g6. So this is the Leningrad Dutch, or I don't know if we should call it the St. Petersburg variation. But this has really become popularized by Hikaru Nakamura. Nakamura has been choosing this as one of his main defenses, and it's quite ironic to see Magnus playing the pet variation of Nakamura, knight c3.
Two openings we couldn't have predicted.
Not at all, not at all.
Dutch and the Sicilian, not at all. I would have said Roy Lopez and maybe Queen's Gambit declined or something like that.
Slavish kind of thing, yeah. Now this move, bishop f4, that is really unusual. I mean, by far, the most popular move by far is g3, castles, bishop g2, and the games continue from there. Hundreds of games have continued.
Now, why do you think so many people choose to fianchetto their bishop against the Leningrad Dutch?
Well, one idea is that white is expecting that black is going to go for the advanced d6 and e5. So when we play a move like g3, castles, bishop g7, bishop g2, pardon me, d6, castles, one of the things that white likes to do is this bishop is now on this diagonal, so after the further moves queen e8, there are ideas like d5, followed by knight d4, and this bishop is very strong on the g2 diagonal. Conversely, we go back just a moment here, and we notice in this position, we notice that this pawn on c4 limits this bishop on f1. That is to say, that is why they like to fianchetto their bishop, is because the pawn on c4 blocks the white bishop. So this move, bishop f4 by Aronian, that is, well, okay, it is what it is, an interesting move. Let's see how Magnus handled it. d6, e3, knight c6 immediately.
So now he's going to try to play for an early e5.
Yes, that is the common, the principal approach by black is to play for e5.
Now, what do you think white's going to play in order to tuck his bishop in?
Ye-
h3?
Right. That is the traditional move, h2, h3 here. So the idea is that on any future move like e5, provided it doesn't lose a pawn, the bishop may be able to retreat to this nice little dwelling on the h2 square. That wasn't Aronian's choice, interestingly enough. He just said, okay, I will play the move bishop e2. Your turn. Now, another question I might have asked is, why didn't Aronian play the move d4, d5, immediately advancing the pawn and attacking this knight, winning a nice tempo against the knight? I'm speculating that the knight would have just dropped back, and black, even though he's losing a lot of time, he's two tempi by moving the knight back and forth. The bishop on g7 has an open vista. I'm not sure. I would have probably played d4, d5 myself.
Now, Carlsen's only played the Dutch in a blitz game in the World Championship.
I've never seen him play the Dutch. Yes.
And that was against Morozevich, and Morozevich won the game.
With white.
Yeah.
Ooh, interesting.
And here we've got Carlsen and Aronian head-to-head, the history of these two mammoth players. 7 wins for Magnus Carlsen, 4 losses, and 24 draws, so a huge number of draws. And
boy, by looking at that stat, you see that they're very familiar with each other. 35 games. I mean, these are veterans of the chess table. I mean, and of course, those 35 games have been games that have been played all over the world.
And include some rapid games as well.
Also rapid games. Okay. So bishop e2.
These guys play so well, even in fast time controls, that I think it all matters.
Right. Yeah. True. I'm thinking here, interesting idea of knight h5, or simply castles by Magnus. Magnus having a think, maybe Maurice could share some thoughts that he might have with us.
Well, I'd like to switch back to the other game because I did a bit of research on this position, this opening, and found that actually Nakamura himself had played this line with the black pieces last year against Geshimov in Vaikanze 2012, and he played this odd move queen to b8. That game ended in a draw in very few moves. Gashimov played queen e2, and that when they only played like 3 or 4 more moves before agreeing to a draw. That wouldn't happen here because we got rules that stop that kind of nonsense from happening. But Nakamura went a different path, which has been seen before with the move a4, b4, knight d5, bishop d6, and queen h5. Not his own move. This has been played a couple of times, most notably by Grandmaster Tiviakov. And in this position, the other moves played were king f8 and bishop takes on d5. So it is Kamsky who has now made this novelty with the move knight to e7, which is why we see Nakamura giving pause in this position as he has never seen this move before. So give Kamsky the plus as far as catching him with a novelty right out of the opening. Back to you guys.
Oh, thank you, Maurice. First of all, that's definite news to me. And that whole Khan variation isn't the most popular amongst the top players in the world, but Gata has always played it. He's always had an affection for that particular line, and it'll be very interesting to see if his novelty works out for him. Just because we have the Magnus Carlsen Livon Aronian game up on our screens, we see Magnus thinking here. In this particular position, one of the things that I would look forward to if I were black is I would love to trade this knight on f6 for this bishop. Unfortunately, I don't think Magnus could do it. After bishop g5, bishop h4, g5, simply knight takes g5, and this knight on h5 is falling with check.
A little discovered attack.
Yes.
And just to correct something I said, actually that 7-4 score that we saw, that was only standard time control games.
Ah, so those weren't including rapids. Okay.
So that's a big plus for Magnus.
It is. It goes to show that he has a very good understanding, good matchup for Magnus when he plays Livon. So I'm thinking from this position,
including other types of games, they played 63 games
in total.
And that's what's in the database. But I'm telling you, these two have probably played some bughouse games on the side.
I'm sure they have. So I would expect Magnus, although he is giving it a little bit of thought, I'd suspect that he would simply play castles at this moment, tuck his king away safely on the king side, and keep this move knight h5 in reserve. Now, once again, I would be very, very tempted, and I would in fact play the move d4, d5.
Just trying to lock down that e6 square, right?
Exactly.
It's often an issue in the Dutch because of the weakening move f5.
Precisely. Now that the pawn is on f5, the square e6 has lost a little protection. And as you've mentioned, Jen, and it's a very fair idea, is to play h3 and to park the bishop back here on h2. So two different approaches. First, d4, d5 is much more concrete, h3 a little bit more strategic. Let's go back to that game between the two American rivals, Hikaru and, wrong.
I don't know. Novelty or no novelty, I like white. Because I don't care how much you surprise me. It's like, the fact is, Nakamura is just like, loves this type of position.
Yeah.
And it's a nice attacking position. I gotta be in Nakamura's camp in this game.
Okay, I can understand why. And I mean, at the moment, this queen on h5 makes a very powerful impression. Black's king is in definitely no hurry to go kingside because this bishop on d3 after a move like e5.
And it looks like Nakamura has made a move. He's looking confident to me.
Before I see his move, I was thinking that white might just simply consider the move knight d5 e3.
No, he's actually captured on e7.
He captured on e7.
It seems like he has replied instantly.
Bishop, no doubt, bishop recaptured on e7.
But are you the type who likes to put your king in the center, that kind of French thing?
Oh yes.
Not
oh,
here,
yes.
though. Not here.
I was thinking about this move knight e3 just to play for knight c4. I like winning the two bishops. That wasn't Hikaru's choice, as you mentioned, Jen. He did, in fact, capture on e7.
No, this is reminiscent. Yeah, that your knight e3 idea reminiscent of yesterday, where
right, the maneuvering Hikaru did a lot of maneuvering with his cavalry yesterday.
To try to maintain a space advantage, rather than make a lot of trades.
Right.
So after bishop takes e7, what's your concern that like trading off all the knights in the position is going to make it harder for white to attack?
No, I wouldn't think of the position in that terms. I was thinking that what Hikaru would like to do is play the move e4, e5. Why? Simply to open up this bishop on d3 and to stop Black from tucking his king nicely over there on the king side. And in the meantime, this pawn on e5 is a very powerful pawn. It really limits, for example, this queen's.
Right, but on the other hand, it does open that diagonal for me on the b7 g2 diagonal, right?
True.
a8 h1.
That's right.
So I can maybe get in some counterattack with a move like queen b7.
Yes. Okay.
But I agree with you. I mean, generally in the Sicilian, we want to get that move e5 in, especially when we have a bishop on d3. In fact, almost any opening where you have a bishop on d3, you want to play e5.
For sure. And so here, okay, after the move queen b7, attacking g2, the first move that intrigues me would be bishop to g5. Okay.
Just ignore.
I'm ignoring. I don't think you can capture this pawn on g2 yet, because after bishop takes e7, king takes e7 would be a mistake. I would simply get in queen g5, check to the king, and I pick up this bishop on g2.
And if I tried an in-between move to threaten checkmate, like suppose I tried something like bishop h1.
Precisely.
In that case, you would just play, let's see, you just play queen g5 anyway, right?
Queen g5, I'm thinking that this bishop on h1 isn't particularly great. So after, well, I don't know, queen g5, what did you suggest?
I suggested queen g5.
Yes.
Yeah, and then
protecting this bishop?
Just protecting the bishop, yeah, and stopping checkmate.
h6.
And then after h6,
we'll take a pawn, yes?
And then if king e7, there's queen f6 check, and then we defend the mate after. We take the rook, then we defend against the mate.
Exactly. So
yeah,
I like this whole.
Good.
I like this idea of e5 followed by bishop g5 is just being a nice plus for white.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, even if Nakamura wasn't expecting this, the Sicilian's a good opening for white, and black is playing something very offbeat, and nobody really plays, so it should be bad, and Nakamura is good enough to like find that advantage. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, okay. One of the ideas behind the Khan Sicilian from black's point of view, of course, he has more pawns in the center than does white. He does have advanced pawns on the queen side, giving him an edge there. The drawback of the Khan Sicilian is what I'm showing you right now, is that black's king is berefit of a number of defenders.
That's right.
And you have to just be wary of such ideas like bishop takes h7 check, and thanks to this rook lift, bad things, evil intention.
Kamikaze mating attacks going on here. And that's why sometimes I have students who don't want to play the open Sicilian, because legitimately they think that if they play the open Sicilian, they're like an open target. Their opponent only has to study one line, the Khan, the dragon, the accelerated dragon, the Najdorf, and they have to study all of them.
That's right.
And while that's true, it's still a heck of a lot of fun to play the white side of it. So even if you know less, sometimes I notice that people who have a gift for playing the open Sicilian, almost doesn't matter that they know less.
Right.
They kind of figure it out.
They just like the activity of their pieces. Yeah. Well, you're an active player. You like that aggressive setups. Gata, he's a great counterpuncher. He enjoys giving his opponent the early initiative, and then when he controls, stabilizes the position, then he's hoping that he'll have an advantage in the ending. In the meanwhile, he still has to stabilize the position.
Yeah, not get checkmated, although that would be a lot of fun for us. So what else is at stake here besides the Sinquefield Cup and all the glory of winning this first most prestigious tournament in the United States? We also have big prize money at stake, $170,000 on the line, with $70,000 for first place, and I think we've got a little graphic which is about to appear showing us the breakdown there. First place $70K, second place $50K, third place $30, and for fourth place it's $20K. and not a bad prize for a week of playing your favorite game.
Well, it's not just a week of playing your favorite game, but it's not a bad price for Nadal. Trust me, these guys have done a month of training to get here. They want to look really good.
A lifetime of training, really. But it is
Of
nice
course.
to see the smartest people in the world getting rewarded for those gifts.
Absolutely.
And let's see more of that.
That was E5. Hikaru did not play the move E5. In fact, he played the move B2,
Ooh,
B3.
We looked at this yesterday too. A lot of the same themes are coming up. So he's trying to put this bishop on the long diagonal, unusual in the Sicilian. Usually we see that bishop in the Sicilian going to E3, G5 in different variations. I don't see this fianchetto bishop in the Sicilian all that often.
Right.
But his idea, of course, is that bishop F6 is not going to work because we do have enough protection on an E5 at this moment.
Right.
Play your move in that case.
Right.
And just seems like a powerful idea, trying to strengthen the other bishop and maybe see how black's going to respond to that.
Right.
What do you think?
Indeed. So let's say black does take a deep breath and castle, and after, for example, a move like bishop b2, okay, again, these two white bishops are really aiming very nicely towards black's king.
And we could have changed our mind and played e5, but you just think g6 is an adequate response there.
Yes, for the moment. And now black really does have to worry about a rook lift. If he were to play a move, for argument's sake, like f6, just to put some moves on the board, rook e3, rook f7, this strikes me as, first of all, white has not made any sacrifices. He's not behind any material, and he's really got a free attack, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget, Hikaru has played e4, c5, queen h5.
Right, the queen's on h5. That's already a little bit of a scare.
A line where it's legit to have your queen on h5. He plays it, and that was years ago, of course.
Right.
But he was already really strong. He was like 2,600 at the time.
Right.
So
True.
he likes having his queen on h5, period.
Yes, he's a naturally gifted attacking player. So maybe this move, maybe this move castles is a little bit too challenging. Black could take a different approach and try to shut down the center. Let me do it in this way instead of e5.
I think you might try to play d6, sure, and then you're gonna follow it up with e5.
Yes, that's right.
Without allowing,
So by putting, from black's point of view, once black's put his pawn on e5, he's basically killed this bishop as far as this diagonal is concerned.
C4 is a nice square as well.
Right, you could pop out to c4, but that might be a lesser evil from black's point of view.
You can just castle
after
at that
castles. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of wish I had my other rook. I wish I had my rook on f1 and my a rook on e1, so I could play for f4 now.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so d6. What else do we have here? Because maybe we can just play. I was thinking about playing. So I guess queen g4 now is just adequately met by bishop f6, and we don't really want to lose time.
Right. So a moment ago, let me just go back. Pardon me. As we mentioned, when white played the move b3, it might look very, very nice to play bishop f6, attacking this rook, winning a tempo. Oops. Big problem. e5 gains a very important tempo against the bishop. So by playing the move d6, from black's point of view, he may be setting up the move bishop f6 as a near threat.
But bishop b2, f4. Maybe we should just play my f4 move immediately. Like,
At the start.
No, actually bishop b2 first.
Bishop b2. I'm sorry. Bishop b2.
Just to try to get it in before you're castled, so that takes an f4 is not an option.
Okay. And you mean you want to play f4 here, Jen?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Attack.
And bishop f6. Defense.
Yeah, I mean, got a lot of options here.
Well, I can see that you'd like to bring your rook here and maybe play bishop c4.
Yeah, bishop c4.
Okay.
Bishop c4. I'm trying to think about the right move
order. The proper move order. That's right. So here, well, let's just try it. Bishop c4.
So bishop c4 looks like castles.
Okay, castles looks like force because you're threatening me with a a killer check, so castles. So now we have rook d1, yes?
Yeah, I'll do
something
rook
like
d1.
that.
Sounds like a plan.
Right. And this is more or less, for what it's worth, a Sicilian-looking kind of position. Hard for me to tell, who stands better or why. I don't, pardon me, I don't like my queen on b8 that much. Let me put it on a better square, I suppose, just connecting my rooks for a moment.
I see that you're not overwhelmed by white's position. I understand why.
Not especially. At the moment, this majority on the queen side is not scaring me. The pawn on b4 adequately fends you off, so to speak.
I guess I'll try to play rook d3 with kind of ideas of potentially playing rook h3 or occasionally, going for the weak d6 pawn instead.
Gotcha.
If things don't work out.
All right.
And you're probably gonna, I don't think you really want to spawn to rook h3 with h6. It seems like you probably want to get g6, bishop g7 in instead, right?
Yeah. I apologize. Let me just take my last move back. I didn't like my queen move. How about queen check? Now, I am assuming the normal move, king h1. And in this case, let me bring my rook to d8. And I'm eyeballing the opportunity to play queen a7, f2, attacking this pawn on f4 as well as the pawn on c2.
And if I take on e5?
Yep, take.
Right, and so your idea is that anytime I'm playing bishop e5, you have a nice little g6 move?
Precisely. So just to show our audience, bishop takes g5, g6. The queen on h5 protects the bishop, and the move g6 seeks to just push your queen off h5.
Right. Okay. So, and if I let's go back a move.
Of course.
And if I play rook takes d8,
rook takes d8.
You can just take back with the rook because the queen adequately defends a7 for the moment. Bishop 8. Yeah. Okay.
And
so you're holding on to.
Just keep in mind that queen f2 is going to be a source of counterplay one day.
Yeah, no, I really don't want to give you the file unless I had a tactical follow-up.
Exactly. You just want to checkmate me, Jen. I know you.
Look at, but you don't play unless it's good. You don't give away that.
You're just having too much
fun.
But
I don't know. I'm liking the possibilities here for white, and it's going to be really interesting to see. I don't like that all the knights are traded off though, because obviously that makes the tactical possibilities a little bit tighter.
Right.
But this should be a really interesting game nonetheless. With that, let's take a closer.
We'll go back. I'm just a little bit shocked. Gata did play the move bishop f6.
Well, that's very strange. Okay. So what is the idea? If e5, there's g6 or something?
Wow. Okay.
Is there? It looks like that's not what happened. Maybe.
He played
a5. Okay. So he did not play bishop f6 first. He played a5 to start, and then after
it went b3,
and then after
a5.
Bishop b2, he played bishop to f6.
Bishop b2, bishop to f6. Wow. Well, that a5, that is a move I didn't think was necessary. That looks like a loss of a whole tempo. So now I'm getting pretty excited, like you were for white's position.
So the idea must be to play g6 here or something, right? Or is that just lose?
That looks like a.
Because I don't understand why he played bishop just go back. I thought maybe he'd want to play g6 and bishop g7, but I guess after g6 you have queen h6, right? Mm-hmm. So that doesn't really turn out to much. Okay. All right. So he's provoking the move e5, which is a move
I wanted to play anyway, voluntarily. So let's see what Gata has in mind. So suppose he goes e5, bishop back to e7. Now, being a barbarian, I would just play a move like rook e3.
You're a barbarian? Maurice is
hoping
style.
Hoping to just
go for the attack.
Go for the attack.
I thought you were a strategist.
Yes, but in this particular case, I like the rook lift coming across the board to try to take advantage of black's weakened king side.
This is the kind of thing I like. As we call it, rover, rook up and over.
Rover?
Yes.
Okay.
It's easy, it makes it easier for the kids to remember. Rook up and over.
Rook up and over.
Red rover.
Okay.
And with that, let's take a closer look at our players in this first ever Sinquefield Cup.
Okay.
My name is Kamsky. I'm from New York City. I'm the current U.S. chess champion.
I'm Nakamura. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm the #1 ranked chess player in the U.S.
I'm Levon Aronyan. I'm from Armenia, and I'm #2 ranked player in the world.
I'm Magnus Carlsen. I'm from Norway, and I'm ranked as #1 in the world.
You know, we're trying to promote our game, so I think everybody knows that it's the first tournament of such kind in the United States for a long time. So I think everybody's going to do their best. Everybody is going to try to entertain the public and play combative chess.
And it's very prestigious, and of course it's the honor of the United States at stake, so we have to perform well.
So the popularity of chess in certain places is very high, but for me it's all about America, and for whatever reason it doesn't seem like there's the level of popularity at the moment, and I'm just hoping that whether it's me, whether it's Kamsky, whether it's players like Carlsen or Aronyan, that in some way we can raise the profile.
I think chess has the appeal of something interesting, something deep, and that's our advantage, and I think that's going to attract people of America.
It's really quite nice to see that there is an elite tournament here.
And again, this tournament is the first among many firsts that the organizers created here in St. Louis. The St. Louis is the chess capital of the U.S. It's only fitting that you guys have here the best tournament.
Actually, I can call myself a representative of the capital of chess, Yerevan, because we have so many clubs and so many people. But I feel tension because I feel that the city of St. Louis is slowly trying to compete with us.
I know that the U.S. Championship has been here for a few years. I've been following it online, both the games and the commentary, and I've heard only positive things about it, and that's part of the reason why I was eager to come here myself.
I think I would have to say that I'm looking forward to playing Carlsen the most. We've played many times before, and most people know I don't have a good score against him, so it's a chance to kind of change things, and I'm just going to do my best.
Yeah, I played Kamsky twice in the World Cup, 2005, 2007. He's extremely tough, fights till the end every time, and I think I have some of the same qualities, and that's why our games are usually quite interesting.
Every player in the world has a unique style, and Levon is one of the most original players you can ever meet. You know, his understanding of chess, his personality, they're all very unique.
I think my usual something adventurous on the borders of something crazy.
Obviously, I enter every tournament with a mindset that if everything goes according to plan, I should have a very good chance of winning.
You know, I'm going to do really well. That's what I feel, but I don't know how well.
I just only play for honor, for glory, and for chess, for the sake of chess.
It will definitely not be easy, and I look forward to it.
We all know each other for many years now, played each other so many games. So it'll be intense, it'll be interesting, and hopefully the fans will be glad.
Well, if anyone didn't say aw when they saw those cute little kids with the Armenian flag,
We did.
you're heartless. Come on,
Exactly.
guys. You probably didn't even feel a stroke of sympathy yesterday when you saw Aronyan midnight to D7.
Oh, I did. Oh.
Yeah, everybody did. Even Nakamura did. So we've got some great questions coming in today at Twitter. Be sure to use the hashtag Sinquecup. That is short for the Sinquefield Cup. We didn't want to make you spell it all out on Twitter. And of course, you can also, if you don't have a Twitter account, you can email your questions at questions@stlouischessclub.com. So keep those coming. We got a few great comments today. A couple of people are asking about the Sophia rules, whether we have it in this tournament. And judging from the way they're playing, it's not even necessary. They're going for blood. But yes, we do have the Sophia rule in place. No draw offers before move 30.
Exactly.
And we also have a comment from Kostya Kavutsky, who actually attends Lindenwood University here in St. Louis, and he said,
shout out to Kostya.
It looks like Levon Aronian expected a Queen's Gambit decline and is playing one from the white side anyway. We also have a comment from Tarjei Svensson, Norwegian journalist, right?
Yes.
And he said that the last time Magnus Carlsen played the Dutch in a classical game was in 2003 versus IM Horvath in Budapest, and he lost the game. 2003, so that means he was 12 years old.
10 years ago.
That's right. So not necessarily indicative of the strength of it in this game, and I think he can be pretty pleased with the results of the opening so far, since he definitely threw Aronian off.
Yes, and here Magnus was the first to cross the equator, so to speak, with this very strong move, knight e4. And this move, knight f6 to e4, shows why the move bishop f4 is frowned upon. For example, let me just show one example of why the bishop on f4 can become a vulnerable tactical target. In case Aronian had captured the knight, pawn takes, and in case, for argument's sake, a move like knight g5, notice that this rook on f8 now attacks the bishop. The bishop is only defended by the pawn on e3. So black has the opportunity to play knight takes d4, and in case the knight is captured, then the bishop falls, and black is doing simply splendid.
Good old removing of the defender. So we'd have to take that pawn on e4 instead to retain some material balance there.
And then after captures, black actually comes out of this whole variation to the good. He has two bishops and a great bishop, and also this bishop on f4, a lot of questions about the efficacy of that bishop. So that was why after the move knight e4, Levon decided it wasn't a good idea to play knight takes e4. Instead, Jen, he played your move h3, which is a very standard idea in the so-called London system, which is to be able to drop back with your bishop on h2.
And I was not worried about the doubling of the pawns after knight takes e3.
No, I don't think he's really worried about that so much. After knight takes c3, b takes c3, white still would get some play, counterplay, on the open b file.
That's right. Anytime you get double pawns, there's a file that opens. So there's a good and a bad with almost every single double pawn.
Right.
And except if it's a file in front of your king, then usually it's just bad.
Then it's just bad.
But let's hear what Grandmaster Ashley had to say about these two games so far today. More exciting than we could have expected.
Well, so far the Carlsen game with Aronian, of course, trying to defeat him, is going apace. It looks like he's played the move e5, has Carlsen, trying to get some play in the middle of the board, and Aronian drop back with bishop h2. That game is okay, but clearly the game of the round so far, we know things heat up in chess very quickly, but so far this one has heated up already, is the game between Nakamura and Kamsky. And the last move that Kamsky played, this move, bishop f6, the computers are going bananas over this move. They think the move is horrible. And the suggestion that's being made is to just simply capture this bishop on f6 and then blast open the center with the move e5. Now, it does have the minus of opening up this g file for a rook. So, for example, rook g8 can be played here looking for threats. But the computers seem to feel that after g3, there are no real threats on this side, and it's black who's going to have to be concerned with the pawn structure problem. This pawn is hanging, and all those dark squared weaknesses in his position. So you got to wonder how Kamsky is judging this position to be okay for himself. Mainly, I think, because his pawns are so solid in this structure here that it's very hard for the white pieces to crack them. So he's probably judged that to be the case, but it's got to be a refined judgment here, because otherwise he could just see himself getting squeezed on the dark squares and those bad pawns and that bad pawn structure. So we'll see what Nakamura is thinking about and how he plans to proceed. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Maurice.
Yeah, very insightful. I agree with what Maurice was just saying. Agreeing with the computers. I hate doing that, but in this case, it sure looks to me like they're right. After the simple trading of the bishops, black's 2 pawns on the f-file have been compromised, and the only thing I can see is some line that would go e5. Let's try this rook g8 for just a moment, g3, and this, it's a scary line. If I were black here, I'd be happy if I could, provided I could get my king on e7. The reason I don't like this line, let me go back here for just a moment, is I was fearful of this move, queen h6. And this is what Maurice was showing, is that suddenly there's a lot of weaknesses in black's camp. The dark square weakness is the queen is looking really powerful on f6, and black's structure has been compromised. So very nice variation. I'm sure Hikaru is looking at this thing to himself, what has Gada got prepared? This looks easy. This looks like fun stuff for white.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sometimes the Open Sicilian can be a lot of fun, especially when you're Nakamura, a brilliant tactical player who, even in a 1 minute or 5 minute game, he can execute a brilliant attack. So when he has all this time in his clock, the amount that he sees is really just extraordinary. Now let's take a look and see how these two players have matched up in the past. We know that Nakamura has recently won a crucial game against Gada Kamsky here in St. Louis. That was about a year and a half ago.
For the U.S. Championship title on the line.
Exactly. And that being said, actually, Gada Kamsky got the better of him in a Grand Prix tournament recently.
Right.
So
to even their record, it looks like. Yep.
Now you would expect these two to have played a lot more, but remember that Gada Kamsky took a long break from tournament chess just when Nakamura was rising to the top.
Right. To pursue his legal career. Right.
And then when he came back, Nakamura was rarely playing in the United States because he was playing in all these international competitions, the London Chess Classic, Chorus, all these places. And the funny thing is, a lot of times in these great tournaments in Europe, they only invite one American player.
Right.
So they're almost less likely to invite the two of them at once.
Exactly.
And therefore they don't battle head to head.
Right.
Nearly as much as you would expect.
Exactly. I was very surprised to see that they had played so few games, comparing, for example, between Aronian and Magnus. They play like 35 games, and they're from 2 different countries.
Right.
You kind of would have thought that Gada and Hikaru would have played head-to-head a lot more often.
Yeah, I mean, it's really strange, but that's one of the great things about this tournament, the Sinquefield Cup. It's giving opportunities to our top U.S. players to play each other and the best in the world, and also a lot of inspiration for our youngsters and other up-and-coming players. They think they see this and they think like, well, if I keep working my game and become an elite player, look at what's available to me.
Precisely. And Hikaru has jumped on that variation. Did you see his he's very expressive at the board, is Hikaru. And did you see him kind of like looking around, fidgeting, like he felt that what Gada did was very untrustworthy, and he did pounce. He has captured on f6, and he did follow up with the move that Maurice suggested from the computer, e4, e5, and Gada under pressure early.
Yes, so an opening surprise that did not work out. It's not good enough for it to be a surprise. It also has to be good, right?
Yeah, we like both of those things, yes. Good surprises.
And look who's pouncing on a man who's down. We thought that was going to be Carlsen, but it's Nakamura. Of course, having 2 whites, he's got to pounce.
Oh, yes.
Because to win this tournament ahead of his rival, Magnus Carlsen. And to be fair, I saw an interview with Nakamura where he talks about Carlsen as his rival. That being said, I don't think Carlsen talks about Nakamura as his rival.
Right.
He talks about Anand and Aronian, but maybe soon.
Maybe soon.
Maybe soon, maybe after this tournament. And let's hear what Maurice has to say about these exciting games.
Well, that line you said about Carlsen being a rival of Nakamura, I think it's extremely important that Nakamura wins today. For him, he knows that he's got to face the guy who has put a foot on his neck over and over again in Magnus Carlsen in tomorrow's round. And Carlsen, when he sees Nakamura, he's thinking, okay, this has got to be a point, because he's so confident against him, having won 7 of their matchups and having lost none at all. So I think today Nakamura is playing with passion, with drive and desire, and he would love to kick a man while he's down. And right now, Kamsky is playing some truly fishy chess, allowing this position. His king is still stuck in the middle. His pawn structure is compromised. His pieces are still sitting back there on the back row. So he's feeling the pressure right now, and he's got to wonder, am I going to go down 0-2? Because 0-2 means you're done. You're out the tournament. You're not coming back to win after losing the first 2 games. So feeling the heat right now is our reigning U.S. champion, Gata Kamsky. Jen and Yaz?
I have to agree with Maurice on that one. You cannot afford in a 5-round tournament to lose your first 2 games. It's not like you got them where you want them type of thing. Here, I'm very, very suspicious of Gata's position, and maybe the best defense in this case is a good offense. I don't trust anything I'm about to suggest. But how about the move Queen B7, Jen? I'm trying to at least intimidate you and frighten you into defending. Scared. I know you're scared.
Oh, no.
Oh yes. Oh yes. I'm trying to intimidate you into doing something wrong on this G2 pawn. How would you?
You mean you're trying to get me to play F3?
I do. That's
Yeah,
exactly
'cause I
right.
don't
I
really
want you
wanna
to.
do that.
I know
Yeah.
it's not your first desire, but okay, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Is I'm trying to swing the game, the initiative, and I can't just play defensive moves any longer. The idea behind the move Queen B7, just a heads up for everybody, is I want to castle long.
Right. Like if
Even
I played Queen G4, for instance, you would just castle long.
right,
Yeah.
even at the cost of the F7 pawn. My intention is to castle long. So, what do you think? What are you going to do?
So I don't really feel like, I'm definitely going to check. First of all, we really need to check takes on F6.
All right, let's do that. We'll take on F6. I have to follow up with Bishop takes
And now
G2
if I
in
play
this case.
Queen C5, stopping castling and threatening mate in 1.
Mate in 1 is
Heads
a good
up.
threat.
Heads up,
Look
just
at
letting you
this.
know.
Yes,
In case you didn't notice.
I did, and thanks for the heads up. In any case, so Queen E7 checkmate forces me to play the move D7, D6.
Yeah, now I can get my other. I was thinking Bishop B5 check to
Right.
start things off here.
Right, that looks like a great idea.
Like, yeah, it's like my attack's stronger than Black's.
Right, the bishop on G2 was nice,
Yeah.
but not nice enough. We'll go back 1 move. We'll go back 2 moves, and here we go back here. You captured on F6. Oh my! My intention with Queen B7 had been to castle, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But now, for the very first time, I'm realizing
Is it just A5?
that the A5 pawn is hanging, and not only do you capture that pawn on A5, thank you very much, that is a pawn, but you have this devastating threat, Bishop A6.
Yeah,
And
queen
this is
good.
just terrible for Black. So my whole suggestion of playing for the initiative with Queen B7 may simply be refuted.
But he just has to dig deep and really search here, because you can't just let this could be a critical moment, right?
Oh, absolutely, it is a critical
If he doesn't
moment.
find a good defense here, he could just lose the game quite quickly. So
On the spot.
he's got to go for it. We've got a couple more questions and comments coming at our hashtag Sinquecup. One is, will there possibly be an Armageddon match for tie breaks if needed? And the answer is yes. There might be an Armageddon match if needed. What's going to happen is if 2 players tie for first in this tournament, they're going to play a rapid match. But if that rapid match is even,
Right,
then
after
we'll
2.
go to Armageddon rapid.
Ooh.
So a lot of people like that.
Excellent.
And we also have a comment from Maurice.
Well, as much trouble as it looks like Kamsky's in with the black pieces in his game, Carlsen looks like it's smooth sailing for him. After that tepid opening by Aronian with the bishop on F4 that you didn't like, Yaz, and now he's had to deal with the move E5 and dropping back to H2 is what he did. And now, look at this nice sequence. E takes D5, E takes D4, E takes D4, and now knight to G5. undermining the defense of this pawn with this bishop all the way over on h2, biting on granite, I might add. There's no one home defending the d-pawn, and Carlsen has taken the moment to try to trade off the supporting knight and have white deal with this d-pawn, which is now under fire from this knight on c6 and this bishop on g7. And if he advances it, of course, this bishop is going to be wonderfully placed on this diagonal, plus this e5 square is going to be available for a knight. So it looks as though black has answered all the problems in the opening, and Carlsen must be feeling comfortable with Aronian realizing, man, no advantage. How am I going to beat this guy? And I'm already down a game. So the leaders looking like they're pressing the initiative right now. Jen and Yaz?
Right on the button, right on the button. It seems to me that Carlsen has outfoxed his opponent very cleverly with his choice of defenses. Not a defense I would have expected. Clearly, Aronian has not answered the call very well. And now I don't even think Aronian has equality. I simply prefer Magnus's position. He's in great shape. Just to
we have a question actually related to this opening at our hashtag SINQ SINQ Cup. He asks if you think that Carlsen's going to try the Dutch against Anand in November in their World Championship match.
Well, if he has a lot of success with it, why not?
That's right. So it's kind of like a surprise that he's showing what he's going to play. It would be like a level.
Yeah,
right?
that would be a reversal from the norm. Instead, novelties are to gunfighters their fast draws, so to speak. And chess players don't want to reveal their novelties before a World Championship.
Won't study for the Dutch because he plays it here, so he doesn't think Carlsen could play the Dutch, and then he will play the Dutch.
Exactly.
There we go.
Right, there you go. A big switcheroo.
Although Anand's probably studying everything. I mean, right? He's not going to leave, but there's only so much research you can do.
Exactly.
So you have to focus on major areas, right?
I would not focus on the Dutch as a particular weapon that Magnus might use, but again, what's happened in this particular game very early already, I like Magnus's position. I think he's simply doing very well at this moment.
And that question, by the way, is from Seren Plavgard. So keep those good questions coming to Sync Cup.
Yes. I just wanted to show one line, which was, as Maurice said, if this pawn on d4, which is suddenly lacking support, is coaxed forward with the move d5, d4, d5, then after a trade, Maurice pointed out that knight on e5, you've got that fabulous square that all King's Indian defense players love to have a knight on e5. Knight on e5 attacks this pawn on c4 as well as the bishop on f3. If the bishop were to drop back from f3 to defend the pawn, then after the move f5, f4, with the idea f3, black is simply in charge. This is a fabulous, fabulous position for black.
I like that knight. I like that bishop. I like both bishops.
Yeah, I like everything.
Yeah.
This is a strategical disaster for Levon very early, and he cannot play like this because this is simply too powerful.
Queen to h4. It's like just
too powerful a position.
Queen to h4 and queen to h5. It'd be nice if we had a twin game.
Yeah, it's like some kind of a mirror, right? So maybe to avoid what looks like a very unpleasant line, white may have to play a move like knight takes g5, queen takes g5. I don't like what I'm suggesting here, but this bishop, as Maurice was saying, is biting on granite, at least with the move c4, c5. You try to mix it up, but I don't like white's position.
All right, so this improvisation that Aronian did, maybe he would have been better off just playing something super topical.
With g3, as we were saying.
Yeah, stand on the shoulders of giants. Of course, he is a giant. He's number 2 in the world. But
right.
Sometimes somebody plays something you don't expect, and you play something weird. Well, actually, it's like better to play straight into it, because if it was good, then it would be a main line. Like what Nakamura did. He wasn't like, I wasn't expecting the Sicilian, better play the Rossolimo or the C3 Sicilian.
Right.
He did play the C3 Sicilian in a game pretty recently, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't he white against Carlsen, the C3 Sicilian? I thought that was in London.
Ooh.
But
he didn't duck the challenge today, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And I like that decision.
Exactly. So here, I don't like this position for white, but I don't see exactly how Levon is going to save himself and to try to get back to equality, because this move knight g5 is really not an easy move to answer. Again, as Maurice is pointing out, all black really wants to do is capture or trade knights on f3 so that this pawn on d4 has no support. Thanks to the attack of the knight as well as the bishop, black is threatening to capture a pawn for free.
And somebody with a keen eye for aesthetics has made a comment on our Twitter hashtag SinkCup. Those chess sets they are playing with look beautiful.
Yeah.
And those are actually custom designed for this tournament. In fact, the founder here at the chess club, Rex Sinquefield, always thought it would be a great idea to have DGT sets that were actually specifically designed to be better weighted and more beautiful, like a really nice set.
Right.
And this is how the players drew the lots. They got to pick one of these sets, which was designed by House of Staunton.
Right, and they got a commemorative set.
And they get to take it home.
Right.
Which is nice. And actually, Maurice was quite stoic during the opening ceremonies until he started nodding vigorously when he heard he was going to get the chess set. So
yeah, he was very pleased about that.
It doesn't matter how much you have in life, you always like presents, especially when there's something that you need.
And they're very beautiful. So the story there, just so that people who aren't familiar with the DGT boards, DGT boards are used around the globe in the elite tournaments, but each piece has a sensor in the base. And when you move the pieces around the board, there's a grid underneath the chess table that picks up the sensors from the pieces so that as the players make their move, they're automatically piped through. But the problem with the sensors had been that you couldn't use weighted pieces.
Right.
So that the pieces were flopping all over the place. So the chess players, the professionals, have been playing with real garbage sets. And Frank Camerata, the designer from the House of Staunton, said, look, I can solve that problem. And he created these commemorative sets, Staunton design, with bridled knights. And they're really beautiful. Magnus mentioned yesterday, I believe, in an interview, how much he really felt better with these sets. And that really also has a lot to do with Rex's vision.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from the architecture of the place to the set that they're using in this tournament, aesthetics are important, not just on the board, but in the play. In fact, these tables are actually also designed by a young man in St. Louis who's very talented, and they're unique to the club as well. And speaking of the founder here, we actually have Rex Sinquefield. I almost said Grandmaster Rex Sinquefield.
He will never let you forget that, Jeff.
He is with Grandmaster Maurice, actually.
Indeed, I am with Rex Sinquefield, who no one will ever confuse for a Grandmaster. Of course, my very dear friend Rex Sinquefield, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Maurice.
Rex, you have been not only a lover of chess for many, many years, you have now decided to help sponsor fantastic events here in St. Louis, this gorgeous club, these amazing events, all these U.S. championships now, the Sinquefield Cup, aptly named after yourself. What is it that made you feel the need and passion and drive to bring so many great events to St. Louis?
Well, I've always had a strong, passionate interest in chess from the time I was 13, from the time my dear old Uncle Fred taught me to play. And the second game I defeated him, and I still feel guilty about it. But I've always been interested. I've studied it over the years. The frustration would be that I never had great training until the last few years when I happened into Grandmaster Jennifer Shahade, who had the patience and virtue to take me on as a student. And I know her place in heaven will be high as a result. But I thought that it would be important for St. Louis to have a chess club, especially one that reached out to the children and the schools. And we specifically wanted it in this location because we're close to the inner city schools and the inner city public schools. And that was our main thought when we picked a location, and we were lucky to find this particular site. Everybody who's been here knows it's a spectacular setting beyond belief.
Now, why are you so concerned about reaching out to young people as you do? I mean, I myself, I work with young people in New York. Why is that so special for you?
Well, education is one of the big passions I have, not just in chess, but in the area of public policy. And I think it's fundamentally important for our country. Our children are our future, and at the same time, there are millions of children who are being denied a just opportunity of education, and that's what I'm trying to change. And chess is one small way to give all children a step up in opportunity, because as you know, it does wonderful things for them.
Indeed. And you have this amazing tournament. It must be just delighting you to no end to have the two best players in the world battling the two best players in the United States, or at least in the same tournament. This got to be a total thrill.
This is unbelievable. 3 years ago, I would have never thought about this. We started talking here at the Chess Club with Jennifer and with Joy and a few others about what should become our signature event. And somehow we iterated in our discussions to something that would be international with top players. But none of us dreamed that it would be this good the first time around. This is spectacular, not just for St. Louis chess, but for world chess, because we know hundreds of thousands of people all over the world are enjoying this now as we speak. And they're especially enjoying it because we have three of the greatest commentators in the world: Maurice Ashley, Jennifer Shahade, and Yasser Seirawan.
We won't disagree with that at all. What did you think about seeing Carlsen and Aronian at the Rams game? That was something special, wasn't it?
Oh my goodness. I wish everybody could have seen that. How Magnus Carlsen got into a game of American football, one he had never seen before, and he was cheering ardently for the St. Louis Rams. And I mean, much more ardently than I do. He's pounding on the side, waving the flag around. I said, this is unbelievable. Of course, I even saw you cheering for a St. Louis
Oh, please don't let that rumor get out. Everybody knows I'm a Giants fan. Let's get that clear. But it was a very exciting game.
It was.
And the way you treat all the guests here, it seems it's important to you to do that.
Every guest here is special, even the children. You know, we go out of our way to make everyone feel welcome. And we're doing what we can, and Joy and Tony do an incredible good job of running everything, making it go smoothly, providing food and drink for everybody, trying to be the most accommodating people we have. And that's just our way of welcoming people who care about chess.
And finally, what is your view of how you're going to top this? I mean, you're doing some great things now. Do you have any plans for the future we should know about?
I would have to say that this one sort of sets the template. And I think if we do something better, it's going to build on this. Maybe next year it would be more players than just 4. But in terms qualitatively, I don't think it's possible to improve on this. I think we can embellish it, but I don't think in terms of orders of magnitude we cannot improve what we're doing. Unless we had a world championship match here.
Is that
That's
possible?
A thought. That's a thought, isn't
Uh-oh. Maybe we get the announcement now.
No, not yet.
Well, thank you so much, Rex, for all you're doing for American chess and world chess. Fantastic job here in St. Louis.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Rex Sinquefield, the founder, sponsor of the St. Louis Chess Club. And as much as I try, I still got to like the guy. You know, it's like, he's just a good guy. Jen and Yaz?
Unfortunately, we didn't get Rex's opinion on the positions.
Well, there are good and bad things about that interview. Compliments are always accepted, though.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
that was great, and it is wonderful to be here. We've got the museum across the street.
Yes, that's
World Chess Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And I encourage you all to come out, because not only do you have me, Maurice, and Yasser, you've also got 2 live commentary Grandmaster teams who are live at the museum and at the sports bar next door, Leicester. So
exactly.
if you're anywhere within striking distance of St. Louis, this is the event that you want to check out.
Right. And we just have a few more moves before we take our first break of the day. I'm sure Levon has recognized that his position is not very good. He has captured on G5. Queen has captured on G5. And recalling what I had said earlier about how powerful an outpost the E5 square would be for Black's knight, Levon played F4, attacking the queen, and I'm sure he's going to follow it up with D5. But after, for example, a move like Queen F6, D5, Knight D4, it's Black who has the advantage, and our 2 tournament leaders, I think, are doing great in this round 2.
Well, it certainly would be thrilling if we started out with 2-2-0 scores, right?
Wow.
And of course, Magnus and Nakamura are going to be playing tomorrow.
Oh, very, very good. So, wow.
Still a lot of play, though.
Of course.
Plenty, but advantage
Black
in Carlsen's game and advantage White in Nakamura's game. So
exactly.
the two youngest players in the field, the top player in the world and the top player in the U.S., are showing their dominance so far in this event. Will they continue through the end of the round? We will find out. Stay with us here at the St. Louis Chess Club and the Sinquefield Cup. We will be back shortly. Hello and welcome back to the Sinquefield Cup, our exciting round 2 coverage. If you have any comments or questions, please don't forget to tweet at us using the hashtag #SincCup. And you can also send your questions to questions@stlouischessclub.org. And we've got, actually, I think it's stlouischessclub.com is the email address. And we do have a comment from Kevin Banas, and he asks, can you explain what rules are in place to prevent quickly agreeing to draws? And the rule that is in place is a very popular one called the Sophia rules, meaning that you cannot offer a draw in the first 30 moves. Sometimes they use 40 moves. In this tournament, it's 30.
Right. There can be a repetition, of course, a perpetual check, 3-time repetition, but the players are not allowed to offer draws. And we haven't seen a draw offer either.
And we might have 4 decisive games in our first four games, which would be absolutely astonishing at this level of play.
Yeah, something you just don't see.
Of course, there's a lot of play left today, but we do have 2 clear advantages in the games. And with that, let's get right into let's get right into Carlsen Aronian.
As well as Nakamura Kamsky, but I believe Maurice would like to share some thoughts.
Indeed, Yaz, the idea of drawing early is a kind of rule that you wonder about, this idea of agreed draw. Maybe you can play 5 moves and agree to a draw. And if you think about any competition, any sporting event, imagine the NBA, imagine the NFL, the 2 teams come out onto the court or onto the field, and after a quarter the score is 0-0, and they say, you know what, I want to go catch another game, so why don't we just agree to a draw and tell all the fans to go home? It's completely ridiculous that I think it still is in chess. And of course there's situations which are natural draws, but at the elite level, any such draw offer to me, even before move 40, is ridiculous. I mean, there's no reason to have a draw offer available to players because the draw should just be clear on the chessboard. They should be fighting towards the bitter end. And I think that chess has suffered from this for a very long time. We've seen many incidences happen over the years, players quickly agreeing to draws. And if chess were to ever try to make it on American television, that rule would clearly have to be modified because nobody's going to watch those games. You sit down getting ready for some fun and find out the game is over in 10 minutes. So we'll see how this continues as the organizers here try to push for more exciting competitions, especially on mainstream American television. Back to you guys.
That's right, Maurice. And Maurice is a pioneer in making chess more exciting. And we actually talked a lot about all sorts of different ideas to eliminate draws.
Mm-hmm.
My brother Greg Shahade, who's the founder of the U.S. Chess League, also has a number of creative ideas. So I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit more in the show. I also wanted to mention Magnus Carlsen, who on Twitter at the World Cup, where there wasn't any Sophia draws rules in place, his comment I thought was a really nice one, and he said that in one round the games were drawn after 14 and 16 moves.
Right.
And it's easy to understand the players who need rest in that hectic knockout format, but it's hard to understand rules that would allow them to do that. So he's putting the onus on the organizers and the rules to come up with ways to eliminate this, rather than the players who might just see, well, my goal is not only to be an ambassador of the sport, but also just to increase my chances of winning this prestigious competition.
Precisely.
So they kind of put themselves first, and in some ways that makes a lot of sense, especially in a really critical competition. So that's why the organizers have to step up and structure it accordingly.
Right, and this is just an evolutionary thing. I think we're going to see it more and more, the Sophia rules being accepted by the players, and I think that 30-move regulation that we have today is just going to be extended in the future so that you can offer draw before move 40 and then perhaps move 50 and so forth and so on. But Maurice is right on. No other sport, the players can simply say, okay, we've had enough. It was a great period, great first half. Let's not come out for the second half. Speaking
what's all this drinking orange juice out of an Evian bottle? I'm trying to figure that out.
I'm not picking up on that,
It
but
seems like
okay.
that's a popular beverage of choice. I saw Carlson drinking orange juice from an Evian bottle yesterday, and it seems like, you know what it is? It's probably like one of those powders, that vitamin C powders or something. Maybe that's what it is.
That they pour in.
Grandmaster secrets of nutrition. And speaking of the games today and draws, doesn't look like we're seeing any quick draws in this tournament so far. In fact, Nakamura and Kamsky couldn't have been more exciting. Probably one of their exciting games that they've ever had. And here, what do we have?
When we
last looked at it.
Right. When we left it, we had seen this move e5. Gata, after serious consideration, came up with the move we had expected, rook g8. With this move, rook g8, there was a threat against the g2 pawn. Hikaru had to defend against that threat. He did so with the move g3. And now rook g5 by Gata, queen h6, rook takes e5, queen takes f6, and this is the problem that black is facing, is that this white queen on f6 is on a dominant outpost, a lot of weak dark squares around black's king. Also, not to be forgotten about, there is a pawn hanging.
What did we sacrifice to get this position for white?
Nothing. White has a very big strategic advantage without even having had sacrificed anything. The rook moved from e5 to h5 to defend this pawn, but that's a very strange looking rook standing all by its lonesome out there over on the h5 square. I really don't like what has happened to Gata's position. It just seems to me white has a wonderful advantage with no risk.
Right, and now how to try to increase it, because as marvelous as white's position looks visually, it seems like all of our pieces are in pretty decent squares, except that rook on a1, which is not participating.
What did you call it? Rover a moment ago?
Yeah, the rook up and over.
The rook up and over, and I do like that idea. Simply start with a move like rook e3 so that we can bring this other rook over to e1. Not that we're necessarily threatening to sacrifice a rook on e6 in the immediate term, but just rook e3, rook e1, increasing the pressure against the e6 pawn, and perhaps if white finds it necessary, once we've doubled rooks, we can get rid of that rook and go after this pawn on
That's
h7.
Right. I mean, that pawn does look like it's a potential goner. I mean, we could also try to round it up at some point just with a simple move like queen g7, right? And,
exactly.
H6 would, for instance, perhaps fall to bishop g6,
right.
That kind of thing. And your rook is looking like it doesn't have any squares. That's kind of cool, actually. Just
right.
Queen g7, h6, bishop g6 would actually seem like winning almost on the spot, because it would come with also the threat of queen g8.
Right.
Highlighting f7. So that's another possibility here for white.
What Hikaru did end up going for is he played the move bishop e4. I understand this move. It wouldn't have been my first choice. I understand this move. From white's point of view, he could be potentially scared that a battery, for example, black might play for a queen d6, queen d5 type of thing. Hikaru, could have been afraid that this diagonal was too weak, so he wanted
to be fair, it's black's only good piece.
That is true. Right. That is true. So bishop e4 was played, and the other benefit of a bishop trade would mean that the rook could come to d1, and this pawn on d7, which at the moment is securely anchored by the bishop, would become a weakness. So after the move bishop e4, I believe Gata played the move queen d8. Gata's idea is simply that this queen, it cannot be tolerated. It's simply too strong on the f6 square, so he played queen to d8 to offer the trade of queens, an offer I am sure Gata will decline.
Well, that's interesting. So he decided to play queen d8. What if he had tried? What's going on tactically if he had tried doing it the other way with queen to e5?
Queen e5. Well, at this moment, a queen trade would cost you this pawn on h7.
Probably just
Takes.
That's one way to do it. That's simple.
Just to snap a pawn.
I was thinking there might be something stronger, like with queen f3 or something like that. But
you want to take advantage of maybe this misplaced rook. So what you were suggesting is maybe queen f3 with the idea that you've got certain threats going in both directions, yeah?
Yeah, in all directions, and the a8 rook is also loose. So
exactly.
Yeah, this looks terrible. I just couldn't find immediately the knockout blow. Yeah, and after rook take, well that guy's hanging as well. So
right, you would just end up with just a trade of queens, and that's not.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good. So I wonder after queen e5, because I was looking at the problem is queen takes e5, rook e5, bishop c6 with the in-between move. You have the counter in-between move, rook takes e1 check.
Right.
So if for instance it was the other rook, I could sneak in a bishop takes d7 move, but I don't quite have time for that. So queen e5 looked.
But even this ending, Jen, is a favorite for white.
Yes.
I like this.
All those weak pawns.
Right.
That's the problem. I mean, you have a strategic advantage and a tactical advantage.
Right.
In this position as white. You've got the better pawn structure, which is not always occurring in the Sicilian. A lot of times it's the other way around. That white has the weakened pawn structure by making aggro moves like g4 and h4. But here, white hasn't done anything bad to his position, and black is behind in development and strategy.
Exactly.
Pawn structure, rather. Now let's take a look at our players here in St. Louis compared to the rest of the world.
All right.
How do they stack up in the world rankings? It looks like Nakamura nodding his head vigorously. Is that good? You can't tell. He's very expressive, but you can't always tell. Sometimes shaking his head is good, sometimes it's bad. So we got world number 1 and 2, Magnus Carlsen, number 1 in the world, the highest rated player in history. We've got number 2, Aronian, and then we've got Nakamura in 9th place, and I think actually he's inched up a little bit closer, especially after that win yesterday.
He's in 5th according to the live ratings.
And we've got Kamsky in 16th, and he kind of hovers in that 10th to 20th place in the last few years. I mean, there was a moment when you had Nakamura and Kamsky in the top 10, right?
Absolutely.
And that happens from time to time, and that's always cool to see. Look at the world rankings and see 2 U.S. flags right up there in the top 10.
And although the rankings aren't that complementary to Gada's position, I want to point out in World Championship competitions, Gada really plays very well. He has been the challenger to the world champion, and it was only just a few years ago that he and Veselin Topalov played a match in Sofia, Bulgaria, that determined the challenger to Anand. Topalov won that match in the final game, and Topalov played Anand in a world championship match he lost. So Gada Kamsky has actually performed extraordinarily well in world championship competitions. So after the move queen d8, I'm expecting that Hikaru would probably want to keep queens, and maybe he should just snuggle down here with the move queen g7.
And again, h6 fails to bishop g6.
Yeah, no, h6 would be terrible. That would just be a nice little tactical target, so that after a capture, the rook would be lost. A tactic you mentioned earlier.
So instead, after queen to g7, what do you think black will play?
Exactly.
He'll probably...
He's not going to play h6, so let's take that move.
Let's go back. Okay, so maybe he'll start by capturing on e4.
Right. Bishop takes e4, rook takes e4. Maybe some move like queen e7, just getting off the back rank. And now bring our rook.
And also adequately defending against queen h8 check for the moment. That's why we can't play queen g5.
Right.
Because that would allow queen h8 picking up that rook on a8. And that's not a good version of take my rooks. That Yasser once wrote.
Queen g5 check, queen h8, as you mentioned, does skewer the rook on a8.
There's a reason most openings involve an early castling.
Yes.
Not the Sicilian con, though. This is part and parcel for this opening. So here, instead queen e7, as you suggest.
Right. Something like this. And again, pluses for white, around the chessboard, lots of advantages for black, for white in the structure, but still no clear knockout blows for white.
Well, true. We could pick up a pawn now, though. Oh, and that's why you're counterattacking on c2.
Right.
Yeah, you're trying to
bring my rook, at least to develop my rook, bring it into the game. But I am very
I'd
worried
like
about
G4 or something.
Yeah, I'm very worried about this offside rook over here on h5.
It looks like something that I would worry about as well.
Exactly.
And I was thinking, well, here if I play rook g4, it has the kamikaze threat of just queen h8 caveman threat.
Okay.
But I suppose you probably would start with playing queen f8 in that case. Anxious to try to get queens off the board. What do you think?
Yes, I would love to trade queens. I'm just simply aware that you're not going to allow me to. So in this, I would probably take a Sicilian type approach and just make room for my king, so the consequences of a check on the back rank are not devastating.
Right. So now you can just slide your king up to d7.
Right. And still, white has his work ahead of him. I'm not sure I would go with this rook g4 for just a moment. We're back here. If I was white, I'd really want to try to create weaknesses right away.
So you just play rook d4?
And then
something
like this.
Something more like d5.
Right. And after a move like d5, I start to change targets in this case.
And play c4 or something?
Well, c4 en passant.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right. C4, our old rule of en passant. But maybe to play a move like rook f4 with a very, what did you say, caveman approach?
Cavewoman approach.
Cavewoman approach.
Speaking of which, the Women's World Championship is starting tomorrow, right?
Tuesday. Today. I thought it starts today.
I think today was the opening ceremonies,
okay.
Yeah. So.
Yes, the Women's World Championship in China.
That's right.
Very, very exciting
and
match play
there. The Chinese player Hu Yifan is a massive favorite against Ushanina.
From the Ukraine.
Yes,
yeah.
But it's always interesting to see. I mean, what do you think? What do you make of that match? Women's World Championship match. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree that Hu Yifan is a big favorite. She's the number 2 by rating, only behind Judith Polgar. But really, when you have a match play, 2 players can win. It's not just one player.
That's right.
So I'm impressed by our current ladies world champion, and I think that will be a competitive match.
Well, everybody should keep their eye on it, and let's go to Grandmaster Maurice Ashley, who is shaking his head vigorously.
I don't know, Yaz. I think Ushanina is going to get killed. I mean, Hu Yifan is a marvelous young player, becoming the youngest female grandmaster in history at the age of 15, beating Judith Polgar's record, and she has shown that she can hang with the big boys, knocking off a lot of top players on her path to trying to become one of the great players of all time, male or female. Now, she's still got a long way to go, but sitting at 2,600, I believe she outrates her opponent by 120 rating points or so. So the numbers say that she should really dominate this competition. I think in a 1-to-1 matchup is going to be really hard for the Ukrainian, I believe, world champion to hang with this young Chinese phenom. It doesn't look good to me. But I should say also, by the way, that women's chess tends to be less drawish and far more bloody than male chess. We've seen that over the years, so expect to see a lot of exciting games. Certainly a world championship match worth watching if you are a fan of cave woman chess. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Maurice.
Well, Maurice took the easy way out there with the by comparing the ratings, but I'd just like to point out again that in Tromsø, Ushanina was outrated dramatically by 6-time champion Peter Svidler, and Peter Svidler lost in a classical game to her, and she lost the match in overtime, but that was like, whoa, wait a minute, don't take this young lady for granted. It'll be a tough match, I'm sure, ratings notwithstanding. In our game between Magnus Carlsen and Levon Aronian, I had mentioned earlier that I really felt that in this position after f4, which is where we left it that Aronian was at a big disadvantage during our little break. As it turned out, I ended up analyzing with all people, Rex and Maurice, and the
Lucky man.
Yeah, and I'm shocked to say that our analysis has been followed precisely from what we looked at. In this position, I really like Black's position very much. The fact that his queen and bishop are on this long diagonal, it's a beautiful battery. This knight on d4 is simply superbly placed in the middle of the board. Maurice's idea is that white has going to have to undertake a lot of moves to get his bishop on h2 back into play. And that was what we were looking at. And I said, well, with simple and powerful moves like c5, bishop d3, bishop d7, bishop d1, and I suggested rook a e8. This is where what Maurice, Rex, and I had looked at during the break. We got this precise position on the board, and this is where we stopped it, and everybody said, yeah, Black is for choice. It's just a very nice plan from Black's point of view to play b5, b4, and take advantage of this long diagonal. The dream being that one day to capture the pawn on b2.
And we just love that dark squared bishop. And you know, another student from Lindenwood University tweeted at our hashtag SinkCup and said that that's a pre-dash kind of pawn. Did I get that right?
I call him pre.
Right. Oh, somebody said pre-Diddy.
Pre-Diddy.
I remember that from our
yes.
last show. That's right.
That's right.
But he's an international master studying marketing and business at Lindenwood University, and he said that he who controls the dark squares in this round has the edge. And that's right. I mean, It's a good observation. Carlsen has total dark square control in this game, and of course in our other game, Nakamura is holding on to those e5, f6, g7 squares, and that's what gives him the edge.
Right. And, well, first of all, shout out to Pri. I am today, GM tomorrow. Trust me, this young man is a very, very, very good player. And in this case, again, Magnus doesn't have what I would call a decisive edge, but strategically speaking, I know with an absolute 100% certainty that Black's position is to be preferred. Let's go back for a second because things have happened in the game
yes,
between
we have some moves in Nakamura,
Kamsky. Yes.
So that rook on h5 looks like it's left that rather woeful square anyway.
Exactly. Sorry, I pulled up the wrong board.
So the rook on h5, I mean, normally when you have a rook on h5 as black, you're looking to mount some kind of attack. But for Kamsky, it served a purely defensive function, just to basically protect h7.
Right.
So now he's shifted his rook over after queen d8.
Right. When we left it, we saw the move queen d8. We knew that white would not want to trade queens. I had recommended just kind of settling in, so to speak, on the g7 square. That was not Hikaru's choice. He played queen f3
so
with
just
a direct threat. And this is where Gata played rook on h5 to c5.
Well, queen f3 was actually a double threat, right? We were attacking h5 and we were attacking c6, so it didn't look like he had much of a choice.
Right.
But to move that wayward rook back to the defense.
But now, actually, the rook looks much better on c5 than it does on h5. It's actually doing something.
Right.
It's not just playing a defensive purpose that it was a moment ago. It's now saying, hey, I got a pressure on your c2 pawn.
And of course now we can't take on h7 because of the pin on our the self-inflicted pin on our queen.
Right. It's as desirable as you point out that you know, I love taking pawns, but not at the cost of losing my queen. So that will not be played, of course.
So rook c2 is actually a direct threat here.
As well.
Black finally getting a little bit of play, but it sure does look unharmonious.
Yeah, but again, this is as you know, the Sicilian has a lot of poison from the black side. It's very easy for white to lose his initiative, and when he loses his initiative, as you mentioned, the pawns on the queen side favor black, these very, very solid central pawns, and black tries to steer the game to an ending.
That's right.
Before the ending, the gods have played the middle game, and so you have to work hard to overcome White's early initiative. But once you do that, Black is hanging in there.
Well, I like that this move rook c5. I mean, it's a loose rook on c5, but the nice thing is you do have that anchoring spot on c3.
Right.
So if, for instance, we just try to do some kind of in-between move like queen e3, you can just stick rook c3 in.
And thanks to that pawn on b4, you're nicely protected. Exactly.
So yeah, let's take a look and see what Grandmaster Ashley, who also favored this position for White, thinks as Nakamura is puzzling over his move.
Well, I agree with you, Yaz. It seems as though Nakamura has somewhat lost the thread just a little bit and doesn't have that big initiative that he had before, that edge we thought would just smash Kamsky. But we did note that this pawn formation, very difficult to break down, those 3 pawns without using pawns. You generally have to sacrifice pieces if you're going to get through here with pieces, but who wants to sack these pieces, right? You're not going to give away a rook for these pawns. So the only pawn that could challenge this formation is the F pawn, which of course compromises the white king side in this way, coming along this diagonal. And even if you got there and traded, you still wouldn't have cracked this pawn structure anything really demonstrably clear. So that has been what Kamsky has been playing for from the start. However, this should be noted. After this natural trade of bishops, he might even play the move bishop takes c6 right now. The key feature for queen, major piece endings, queen and double rook endings, is the safety of the king. And if you look at Black's king, it has no home really. I mean, the king side is porous, the queen side even more so. I mean, it's just air everywhere on this side. So this king is a little suspect while White's king is perfectly secure. So White can play for the long-term advantage of the insecurity of the black king, maybe even starting with a move like rook to e4, and if you capture this pawn here, playing rook to g4 and starting to question Black's stability in the middle of the board. So I think that that's what Nakamura is going to start playing for under that well-known principle that in major piece endings, the security of the king is a prime factor. Back to you guys, Jen and Yas.
Thank you, Maurice. And one great example of that was yesterday with Magnus Carlsen taking down Kamsky with the 3 majors versus the 3 majors.
Right.
But the better king.
But the better king.
And a lot of people, after looking at that game in more depth, it was so hard to see what was going on, were just astonished by Magnus Carlsen's precision and foresight in that game.
Right.
One such player was Grandmaster Nigel Short, who tweeted about it and said like how impressed he was by this concept, this defensive concept, right, of F3.
F3, Queen E1, Bishop H4.
Exactly, and he's actually going to be on the show at some point. So
wonderful.
You never know who you might hear from here at our Sinquefield Cup live coverage at the St. Louis Chess Club. So tune in every day and you'll get to hear from Mr. Nigel Short, one of them.
Right. Well, last night when we had dinner together, the whole commentary team, it included Ronan Harzai, Akobian, Ben Feingold, and just what you were saying about Nigel, all of them were very, very impressed by the last 5, Ian Rogers too, pardon me, last 5 to 10 moves of that game yesterday between Kamsky and Magnus, and everybody felt that Magnus had played the game perfectly in those last 10 moves. Like every single moment, Gada defended well, and if any move of Magnus, he didn't make the precise move, the game would have been drawn. And so they were very, very impressed.
Magnus liked the game too. I mean, when he came downstairs to talk to us, he said this game is about the economy of forces.
And
combining defense and attack with that rook on c2, and he was very eloquent in explaining it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Even though you think of these guys as, like great minds and in-depth players, a lot of the times it just comes down to the simple facts. Why is your position better? I have the 2 bishops. Why did you win today? Well, my opponent's pawn structure was weak. Nothing profound, just very simple and clear. And he has articulated the vision that he had for the game very well as well. I mean, the efficiency, the economy of defense. Let's see what had happened. We are now on the game between Hikaru and Kamsky. Queen F3, Rook C5. And do we have a move after? We do have a move. It looks like Queen E7, Queen E3.
So it looks like Queen E3 was played, and instead of creeping that rook forward with rook c3, which could allow something perhaps that he didn't like, such as queen h6.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he wasn't thrilled about this line over here.
Well, if you stop and think about that for a moment, if you put the queen on h6 in this specific position, and just let's make a short comparison for a moment, if you don't mind. I'll go back just a few moves. We had a position like this, and here, you may recall, I was hopping for queen g7. Now, in the game position, what we've got, this rook is all the way over already on c5, and you were just pointing out maybe he was afraid of queen h6. Well, our queen would have been nicely placed on g7. He didn't do that, which is quite a surprise. Queen d8, queen f3, rook c5, and queen e3, and simply queen e7. So again, I can't help but feel that, I don't know if it's nervousness, fidgeting, or what have you, or half moves, that Hikaru's advantage really has slipped here. And he better be a little bit careful, because at the end of the day, there is this very weak pawn on c2. And if nothing terrible happens from
now
Black's...
Now there's a question of taking on h7.
Right. If nothing terrible happens from Black's perspective, he may just play rook c8 and capture bishop. Pardon me, let's look at a capture here. I'm not 100% sure I like that for white. Okay, I'll fall for it. f5, attacking the bishop laterally.
Basically forcing bishop g6 check, which normally is something that white would be happy about, taking away your castling privilege.
Absolutely.
But now the king might be creeping over towards c7, and c2 is hanging as well.
Right.
So this is far from clear.
Right. And at the moment, the bishop on g6 doesn't make a very attractive impression, I must say. Although he seems to be reaching for it. Look at Hikaru's hands.
Because he
did it.
Well, if we play something like queen, so he took the pawn.
He took the pawn.
But if we play something, it's still messy. I mean, if we play something like, I'm worried your f5 pawn's in take, so you can't actually take on c2 here, right? If you take on c2, we have bishop takes f5.
Clear.
So it's kind of, and are you threatening to actually, what is Black's threat here? So, rook d1 has been played?
No, I'm just suggesting a line of play. We have seen bishop takes h7, so just for our audience, we're down the path of what might happen if f5, the most challenging move.
So f5 trying to trap that bishop in. Now rook d1, rook c2 not being a problem because it looks like we could just play bishop to f5.
And thanks to the pin on the e file, the bishop is invulnerable to capture.
Now this looks fantastic again with our bishop getting back into the game. So instead, Black in this position, you would think we'll try to take advantage of that wayward bishop, or you want to just connect your majors first?
Oh, sure.
And you were going to try to play rook g8 next?
Yeah, or maybe, pardon me, I actually fell short of the square I wanted to go to. I want to play rook to h8, so that the idea is to hem in this bishop a little bit further. Now, this is very, very sharp. I mean, you do have a line that might go check and takes, but that isn't so clear to me. For example, let's say I play a move like king b6. Do you really want to capture this pawn?
And allow rook to f8?
Right. Walking, that's a self-made pin. I don't think that white would be happy about this.
Nope.
Okay, we'll go back in that case. So
very concrete variations here.
Right.
I mean, after bishop h7, it looks like Kamsky's still thinking about whether to hem in this bishop immediately with f5.
Right.
Obviously seems like the most attractive move, because otherwise white will just simply backtrack with the bishop.
And be a pawn to the good.
Exactly, and with still some of the trumps that he had in his position earlier.
Right, and just a missing h7 pawn. So this is the money move. This is the key move in the position to punish white for daring to grab a pawn and lose a lot of time, where we would expect that in case of f5, bishop g6 check, king d8, and once again, I don't know if you're really worried about this pawn on c2? This looks like a reasonable move. Rook d1.
We need more than reasonable. We need like the perfect move here, right?
The perfect move.
I feel that we do because I wasn't thrilled about some of those lines we were just looking at for white. So I think Nakamura just needs to find the absolutely most accurate move here, don't you think?
Oh yes. Well, the key line that we were looking at.
We were looking at rook e1, king c7, and then
right.
After queen f4 check, we were looking at
king b6.
Bishop takes f5, but we've got another suggestion here from Grandmaster Maurice Ashley, who's saying rook to e5 perhaps instead, trying to uncover that rook, which is doing a pretty good job of protecting.
Okay, well that's a definitely a better plan than bishop takes f5.
Or maybe there's a threat of queen d4 or something here, kind of so forcing your hand.
I'm still not so unhappy here if I'm black, because what I'm thinking is, you're right, white is a pawn up, power to him, he has won a pawn. But on the other hand, if I can force a trade of queens, I'm not saying that this exchange is forced. If I could get the bishop to e4, put my pawn to d5, I've got a very active king.
Sure.
In short, what I'm saying is I have compensation. It's not all play on one goal. I agree you've got to pass pawn, but okay, I'll get some counterplay as well. And definitely an interesting and very sharp, concrete line of play that both players are going to have to make a crucial judgment on. When he captured the pawn with bishop takes h7, Hikaru was clearly looking at lines of play like this, and in his mind he had reasoned that that was a good capture. Now,
that's right. So he's seen a lot.
Yes.
And this is a crucial position where the question is really who sees more.
Exactly.
Maurice, what do you think?
Who has judged the position better?
Well, I think that this is a huge moment in the game because obviously Kamsky has decided not just to sit and try to protect that H-pawn, he has given it away. And to give up a pawn is a critical decision at this level. No way in the world you're just going to donate a pawn unless you felt like there was nothing better for you to do. So Kamsky has made a big sacrifice. Nakamura confidently took the pawn, and we always like to look at body language, and the way Nakamura got it from the board, it was like, got it in my pocket, what are you going to do about it? And Kamsky so far hasn't rushed with his next move to show that he had something very concrete. So I'm thinking that this is an intuitive sacrifice on his part, trying to get back in the game. And if he doesn't play some moves quickly, then maybe he's the one who's unclear about the state of affairs, while Nakamura is much more confident. I'd like to point out something critical, though, that we have not noted yet, is that Kamsky's time, despite being the one who's been under pressure this whole game, he has more than double the time of Nakamura. Nakamura with only 27 minutes left to play the next 16 moves. Of course, he gets 30-second increment, but Kamsky almost at an hour. So kind of odd that the defender has been keeping the pace as far as time is concerned in this context. And it looks like he's about to play his move, and he's reaching for the pawn, and he has played the move f5. Guys, back to you.
Wow.
Well, that was the key move, as Maurice was mentioning, and we very strongly, all of us, we like the material, we like being pawns ahead, and so it's really up to Gata to prove that his sacrifice is sound and that he'll have sufficient counterplay or play for the pawn.
And we do have those forced moves as well. Bishop d6 check and king d8. Nakamura nodding, leaning up in his chair. Looking like he's going over the variations that he's already looked at in his head.
Now, this is, again, a key moment for Hikaru. White may be thinking that, okay, I don't really worry about this pawn being captured, because if you do capture the pawn, where are you going to reside with your king?